A very good afternoon and namaste from Kathmandu. I would like to welcome all you on the final day of Kailash CAFE 2021. Today there will be an oral presentation followed by the closing session. So at first we will hear talks on gender and governance, and I request Dr. Vinay Pasakhala to moderate this session. Dr. Pasakhala is a governance and institution analyst at ICIMOD. Prior to ICIMOD, he worked in Kathmandu Forestry College, Nepal, and the Asian Institute of Technology, AIT, Thailand. He has more than 6 years of working experience on governance and institutions, mainly related to natural resources management and climate change. He has published peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, and technical reports. His educational qualification includes a master's degree in natural resource management from AIT, Thailand, and doctorate degree in global environmental studies from Kyoto University, Japan. He has also received the Nepal Vidya Bhushan Kha awarded from the government of Nepal. Over to you, Dr. Pasakhala.
Hello, namaste, good afternoon, Tashitele. Thank you, Sunita ji, for your kind introduction. Firstly, I would like to welcome all our speakers and participants for this last technical session, Gender and Governance in the first edition of the Kailash CAFE. Now, we would like to begin our session with an icebreaker activity. First, we would like to quiz you with our Slido questions. For this, we will require you to answer our questions on Slido. Our first Slido question is, what comes to your mind when you hear the word gender? It's a word cloud, so you can type it in 2 words. So now we have got 6 participants. I see that we have got 24 participants and only 7 of them have responded. So would request you to respond. Okay, so majority of our participants have responded is as equality. So whenever they think of gender, equality would come in their mind, and second would be equity and balance. Very interesting words from the participants. Now I would like to move on to, so the next question is, what comes to your mind when you hear the word governance? Again, this is a word cloud, and you can type in 2 words. Well, the first response is rule of law. Yes, I would very much agree on that. Yes, efficiency governance, institutions. We have got 3 responses, and all those are unique ones. Well, now the largest one appears as power. Yes, the governance arrangements is very much essential, and power distribution is one of the issue with the governance in our region. Okay, altogether we have got 11 responses, and most of them have responded is as power. I would agree on that. Others are rule of law, effectiveness, institutions, transparency, which are very much the characteristics of good governance. So now I'd like to move on to the next question. So how do you say mother in your local dialect or your language? For me, at my house, I would call ma. So there's ama, amma, ama, mamu. There's one very interesting one. It's, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly. It's Lisa, Isa. I'm very glad that we have got quite a number of participants here. It's increasing. Ammijan, yes. I think this also shows that we are quite inclusive. Our participants are. Yes, so we have got 14 respondents, and we have Ama, because probably lots of participants are from Nepal. So we have got Ama, which means mother in Nepali. Then we have Ama, which is also again in Nepali, Mama, Mamu, Amijan, Mua. So these are the local dialect, what we say for our mothers. So now I would like to move on to our last slide of question. So how do you say brother in your local dialogue language? For me, it's bhai. Yes, in Newari, we call it kiza. Phono in Ladakhi, very interesting, phono. Gege or didi, bhaiya, Bhaijan. So total we have got 15 responses. And again, the Nepali dialect for the word for brother, bhai, is the majority of them has. Okay, from SudurPaschim, it's Budi. Yeah, okay. So that's Nepali script again, Budi. Yeah. Now I'd like to thank you all for participating in this icebreaker activity. As you all know and reflected in our word cloud of the Slido as well, both gender and governance are very important cross-cutting issues. The Sustainable Development Goal 5 is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. The government in the landscape have made efforts to achieve the goals. However, we know that a lot needs to be done. Achievement of the SDGs is very much dependent on the governance arrangement, meaning engagement of public and private sector as well as civil society in policy making, in policy implementation and monitoring is very essential. So now with this brief background, I would like to move on to the presentation. Today we have three interesting presentations, very relevant ones from India and Nepal on gender and governance issues in the landscape. Now I would like to call upon our first speaker, Dr. Veena Vidhyadharan. She is a fellow at COTS International, which is a global public policy think and action tank based in Jaipur, India. Dr. Vidhyadharan holds a doctorate in agriculture science from Rajasthan Agriculture University, India. She has more than 15 years of experience in research and project management related to agriculture, climate change, transboundary water governance, and livelihoods. Currently, she is leading projects on mainstreaming gender in international trade, particularly in Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and India. May I please request Dr. Vidhyadharan to make her presentation titled Building the Resilience of Women Traders in the Kailash Landscape. Over to you, Dr. Vidhyadharan.
Thank you, Vinaya, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to connect with you all virtually in this time of pandemic. I'm Veena. I work with CUTS as a fellow, as already said by Dr. Vinaya. So let me just share the study which we have undertaken with the support of ICIMOD in Kailash Landscape. So the study is about unlocking trade potential of women in the transboundary landscapes of Hindu-Kush Himalaya, and it aims to build resilience of mountain women to shocks and vulnerabilities faced by them. So today I'll be giving just a brief about the project, its goal and objectives, some of the key findings, because it also meant to address how COVID has impacted women in trade. So some analysis on that aspect and some of the future interventions that has to be undertaken to build resilience of these women. So the overall objective of the project was to facilitate and strengthen women's role in trade in transboundary landscapes of ICIMOD. Now, transboundary landscape, as you all know, they share common hydrological, cultural, ecological, and socio-economic features, despite the various political boundaries. So, so this project, we were trying to understand the nature of engagement of women in these landscapes, whether they are involved in formal trade or informal trade, and to identify the various shocks and vulnerabilities faced by them, and to explore opportunities to enhance their resilience to various kinds of shocks. So this was undertaken in 4 landscapes, but today I'll be presenting the findings from Kailash Sacred Landscape. So this was just an explorative study. So we, even due to pandemic and other travel restrictions, we couldn't reach out to many respondents. So in Kailash, we could interact with 57 women, 30 from Indian side, 15 Tibet, Nepal, 12. And the aspects covered in the survey included, the details of respondents, the economic activities in which they are involved, financial inclusion, digital inclusion, COVID impact, and other social factors that affect them in participating in economic activities. So if you look at the respondents, you can see the orange bar between, which is women of age group 30 to 39, dominated in all kind of activities like handicrafts, enterprise, and agriculture and allied sector. And you can see that, you know, there were minimal participation of women below 30 and above 50 in any of enterprises. And mostly they were dominated in handicrafts sector, like 42% of women of age group 30 to 39 age were involved in handicrafts. And whereas in enterprise, if you look at the enterprises, which includes small vendors, shopkeepers, etc. So 66.67% of women were of the group 30 to 39 age group. Now, if you look at the economic activity, again, 66.67% of the respondents were involved in handicrafts and handloom sector. This was followed by agriculture and allied sector, and then enterprises. Now, more than 91% of them were involved in informal sector, which is sectors which are not registered under any category. So mostly these women are either part of the National Rural Livelihood Mission or self-help group, created by various organizations. So coming to the shocks which are affecting these women, 82% responded that, you know, their income was unequally distributed throughout the year. Most of them, they are, depend on agriculture and allied activities. So the reason for low income included the seasonal nature of the crop. So no commercial crop harvested at that particular time. And climate shocks, of course, they're prone to various kinds of shocks, seasonal consumption, migration, but still climatic shocks dominated among the external factors, though I'll come to the impact of COVID in the later sector, but in general, climatic shocks dominated the respondents. Coming to trade, the data shows that, you know, women are involved in local, cross-border and international trade. By international trade, we means like exporting the product to other country which are not in their immediate neighborhood. But even then, 60% of them were involved in both local and cross-border trade, and only 2% were involved in international or export. That too, we cannot call as formal trade because the production is very low volume of production, and so what they do is they just send to some contact overseas, mostly handicraft items. So that also doesn't come under the formal trade regime, as it doesn't include taxation, tariff and all. It's just sent through a courier or parcel. Now the challenges they face is that they don't have business linkages across border. There are difficulties in transportation infrastructure. There are connectivity issues, digital connectivity, and women who are into cross-border trade, they are also not comfortable with officials, male officials in the land custom stations. Access to finance still remain the major challenge faced by the women in Kailash Landscape. As you can see in the graph, more than 50%, 55.36% have not availed any kind of loan. And those who have availed loan, they mostly depend on self-help groups or relatives or friends, and 12% from their savings. Like even during the time of COVID, it was mostly through with relatives and the SHG group, they managed the crisis. And getting loan from a bank is still a challenge for them. So they are not aware about the documentations required, and the banks are far located, and their limited risk bearing capacity, like they are fear to invest in their enterprise or activity because they are not sure about the return. So this kind of fear of failure also kind of restrict them in taking risk and investing in the business. Digital technology, you can see the response, like more than 98%, they don't know how to operate computer, and smartphones also, they are not using it. Even though they have smartphone, they're not using it for business purpose. And we have seen across the country, and even in other parts of the region, that many people resorted to digital means during COVID. They started using online platforms, online payment mechanisms and all. But in Kailash Landscape, we couldn't see any such activity of significant scale. 100% respondents said that the business has been affected by COVID. The impact was severe, according to 89% of the respondents, and the fall in income was about 64.87%. Now, when we asked them about the challenges faced by COVID, it was mostly on, procuring raw material and then selling the products. Marketing was a major challenge for them. And there was a decreased demand because the purchasing capacity of the customers have also come down due to COVID. So they were not able to sell the products, and they were not able to pay the loans, even the vendors. And those women who are associated with SAGs, they said that even the monthly contribution they make to the groups, it was difficult for them to pay that much. And they're completely dependent on their relatives for, carrying the household expenses and all. Border closure was another challenge, mobility restrictions, and increased stress and care work at home. This was cited by all because men and children being at home, women had to spend more time for their household activities, and they were under immense stress during this time. Border closure, most of the women, they depend on weekly and fortnightly markets to sell their products. So due to the closure of borders, the markets were not functioning properly, and that also has affected them. Now, coming to the future interventions, we thought that the landscape has got its own strength, its own USP. Like you can see the products like chura, Indian butter tree, or scorpion grass, and it's also known for yashgumba and the traditional ipan art, which you can see on the right side of the slide, and of course carpet weaving. So right now these are all. The value chain development is not there for this kind of agricultural commodities or plant products. And in case of the artisans involved in traditional art or weaving, they are not organized. Right now, it is scattered and they undertake mostly on at their home. So we have noticed the significance of market because marketing was the major challenge faced by women, especially during COVID. So you can see the Highlands outlet, which is a cooperative market outlet in Uttarakhand. So wherein women who are women groups who are under the National Rural Livelihood Mission program, they can bring their products and sell. So, and there is also a need for building regional networks, like connecting women across the border. So if a product in the Indian side has got a market in the Nepal side, so that kind of connection networking has to be built among the women entrepreneurs. Private sector engagement is very crucial because as you see the plant like chura, where processing is required, right now traditional mechanisms are used by women to process the seed and get the butter. So but in fact the butter is really valuable material for many cosmetics products. So for this, private sector engagement is very important, and obviously the digital platform, especially in the time of COVID, many people have switched to digital platforms, uploading their products, creating pages in Facebook and showcasing their products. So these kind of marketing skills are to be explored. Upskilling and product diversification is another suggestion which came out from the study. We need to diversify the cropping pattern rather than depending on, say, rice or a few vegetables, which are often prone to wildlife attack, as shared by many women over there. Even the official of Agriculture Department, he said that we need to promote crops like ginger and turmeric, which are less prone to wildlife attack. But then that interest has to come from the farmers, and they have to be sensitized in that sense to diversify their cropping pattern. Now, cluster-based approaches, again, something which can be adopted too. There are farmer-producer organizations, but many of them are on paper and they're not functioning properly. So this kind of approaches can help in developing a value chain of specific commodities. Now, business development and entrepreneur mindset, that's very important, and we could see that from the data that youngsters are not interested in entering into enterprises. So this is because our curriculum itself is not focusing on training our children right from the school level itself, the importance of entrepreneurship as a career option. Capacity building on digital technology and tourism, which is emerging as a promising sector in the landscape, with so many religious hotspots and other nature and adventure tourism is also there. So the positive impact we could we were just asking how COVID impacted tourism sector has been worst affected by COVID because of travel restrictions and all. But even then, lately, some of the respondents who were in tourism sector, they shared that they used to get booking for continuously for 2 months, because many IT professionals from other parts of the country are willing to work from home in while opting for homestays. So, but this happened, at a much later time, and tourism sector has been badly hit by the sector by COVID. But there is a tremendous scope in involving women and their expertise in the sector, because tourism also, there are so many ancillary industries like handicrafts and even hospitality, restaurants and other kind of ecosystem that is also supported by tourism industry in which women are involved. As I said, the options for finance were mostly self-help group, microfinance and angel investors. Like you identify a product and then you have an idea to develop that into a business plan, then angel investors can come in. Corporate finance or all other options of finance, but we need to come up with a strong business proposal in that case to attract private sector. So these are some pictures which show the importance of border markets in the lives of mountain women. You can see the photo of Taklakot International Market, Zhaoli Mela. These are all international trade fairs which used to happen in Kailash Landscape. And last year this couldn't happen. So the women who interacted with whom we interacted, they had a lot of products left with them because they were aiming this market to sell their products. So this was a major backlash for these women. The photo in the slide at the lower end is that of Julagat, where you can see the entire market is closed in the left side, and the same market when opened after the bridge was open, you can see that how lively it is. So the entire economy, the local economy, is dependent on this kind of local markets. It's not just women, but women are worstly hit even in that sense, because it's a story like there's a saying, Nepal or India ka roti beti ka rishta hai. So one woman shared with us, like, she couldn't go to her parental home because of this restriction. So people to people connectivity is very important, and this is also important to sustain the local economy and to empower women in terms of economic activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vidhyadharan, for an interesting presentation highlighting the plight of women traders in the landscape. Indeed, the pandemic has added more challenges, more stress to the women in the landscape. I'll come back to you for the questions towards the end of the session. Now, I would like to remind our participants to post their questions to Dr. Vidhyadharan in the chat box. Again, at the end of all three presentations, we will be taking those questions. Now, I would like to move on to our next speaker. We have Mr. Bhaskar Joshi. Mr. Joshi has completed his MSc in Forestry from Kumaon University, India. Currently, he's working as a project associate in the Secure Himalaya Project Pithoragarh under UNDP India. Mr. Joshi has more than 7 years of experience in Himalayan biodiversity and management. Today, Mr. Joshi will be presenting on assessment of green fodder resource diversity, availability, utilization pattern, and women drudgery, a case study of representative watershed of the Kailash Sacred Landscape, India. Over to you, Mr. Joshi.
Good afternoon, all of you. I'm Bhaskar Joshi, and my this is my work on my PhD when I working Kailash project. This is the I have choose my research on assessment of green fodder resource diversity, availability, and utilization pattern and women drudgery. This is basically a case study of a representative watershed of Kailash Sacred Landscape. The Kailash Sacred during this objective, this the watershed also the part of the pilot testing for the Kailash landscape, as known as hard Kalika landscape. So basically, the fodder is an important part in mid Himalaya region. The women's has also major role in the fodder collection from the forest area, from forest areas or agroforest areas or other. This is the daily works of the women. On the basis of this assessment, we found the fodder play a critical role in livestock, manure, soil nutrients, and traditional farms lands of the mid Himalaya mountain. And we also access a total of 279 species is known for the fodder value in Himalaya region. This is also an important part in Himalaya region that has a huge diversity of fodder species. Basically, in Uttarakhand, the 70% of fodder collection comes from the forest areas, and 40% comes from the trees and leaves. Tree leaves were used for the fodder. During our study, we assessed four major objectives. First, to assess the species level diversity and utilization pattern of fodder species. Second is fodder ability, collection and utilization pattern. Third is the women drowsy for the collection of fodder species. And fourth is the management and conservation suggestion for the study area. So basically, we access four major component of the during my research topic. So this is the study area. I talk about the study area. The study area is known for Hatkalika, watershed, is located in Gangoli Hat, Pithoragarh, and the total cover area was 36 kilometers square and has an altitudinal gradient of 6,000 to 2,000 meters above sea level, and the forest, majorly the two major forest type were presented. First, temperate forest and subtropical forest. In temperate forest, the Bajok and tea pine forest covered it, and the subtropical areas, the sal and pine area, sal pine mixed forest were covered it. All the area, the forest was community based management, has 50% community based management were founded during the study area, and the total of 45 villages were located in the watershed. So this is the map of Kailash, the study area. So during our research, we have selected 9 villages and identify in each altitudes. The 3 altitudes were selected: lower zone, middle zone, and upper zone. The lower zone was classified into 800 to 1200 meter above sea level on the basis of altitudinal gradient, and the in each altitude, three villages were selected and also surveyed in randomly in selected villages. So during our research, during our survey, we have also generated a annual calendar of the fodder species, which is basically the calendar of the apply for the whole watershed. The women's are engaged in whole year for photo collection in my for example, in March or May they engage in bajo. They collected bajo leaf. In May to October they collected green grass, and the leaf folder they collected February to April, and this is the annual whole chart of the collection pattern of from forest. So these are the some major species which were located in the watershed. So first objective, the green fodder resource diversity and availability in the watershed. For this objective, we have chooses two methodology. First was diversity pattern. For this diversity pattern, we have collected each fodder specimens and identify on the basis of literatures and herbarium specimen, and further classified into trees, shrubs, and herbs, and further classified into family wise. And the second task was availability of forest based and agroforest fodder tree species. We have used the phytosociological methodologies, and we have uh, identified villages. We have each identified villages. We have randomly plotted 50 by 50 meters plotted in forest areas. So during our result, the total of 57 fodder species which belonging 33 families were founded in the watershed and comprises the 29 tree species, 9 shrubs, 6 climbers, and 13 grass species were recorded in the watershed. And the major families were Poaceae, Rosaceae, Pagaceae, and Asteraceae. These are the some species, some species which is located in different families. And we have also assessed the Himalayan native species were located in 36% in the whole watershed. This is the good significance. And this is the availability. We have on the basis of phytosociological, we have founded the Quercus leucotrichophora, and the Quercus lanata was highly available in the upper altitude zone of the watershed. And same in other side, the agroforest system in the Grevia oppositifolia and the Grevia optiva was highly presented in the upper altitude zone. And second is the middle altitude zone of the watershed, the Quercus glauca and Quercus leucotrichophora and Cycem pumini. These are the three species which is highly presented in the middle altitude zone, and the same in agroforest, the Greva optiva and Grevia oppositifolia and Bahonia variegata. These are the some common species which is represented in the middle altitude zone. And the lower altitude zone is Soria robusta, one of the fodder species, which has a highly availability in the lower altitude zone in forest system, and the others in agroforest system, the Griva is the and Griva opportunifolia were found in the lower altitude zone. So this is the next objective was to collection and utilization pattern of the fodder species, because the all the activity involved in the for in the involvement of humans. So we assess the collection and utilization pattern of the species also. So next please. So during our research, we have followed the methodology of Sawant et al. 1998. With this methodology, we have collected 10 bundles of fodder species, which is collected by the women from the forest or agroforest first, and we have each bundles we have weighted through our weight machines or spring machines, local machines which easily weighted all the fodder samples, photo cells. And also the questionnaire survey was also during the time, and with this we found that 240 days per household per year in the forest area and 120 days for agroforest. So basically the women's goes in the watershed for product collection is 240 days per household per year, and the and the other system, the agroforest system, the women's goes 120 days. So on the basis of this method, we access the results. So on the fodder utilization, the same, the Quercus was highly utilized in upper altitude zone in the forest system, and the agroforest system, the Griva optiva and Griva oppositifolia were highly utilized in the upper altitude of the watershed. And middle altitude, the Quercus glauca, Cytium cumini, Terminalia cupula, these are the species were utilized in middle altitude zone, and the other is lower altitude zone, the Soria robusta and Cytium cumini, Terminalia, and Melotus philippensis. These are the four species were highly utilized in the lower altitude zone in the forest system. In other in agroforest system, the same in Griva optiva. Now, the very important objective was the women's drudgery and energy budget. Also, we have also calculated the energy budget of the women's for the collection time. For energy for women drudgery, we have followed Gopalan et al. 1978 methodology. During for this methodology, the energy expenditure for an adult women's, yeah, females is for is 0.5 to 3 mg megajoule. Uh, it express if a women work very hard, it the energy loss of an women's per hour is 0.5 to 3 megajoule. So on the basis of this methodology, we have followed, yeah, we have access our resulted. Next please. On the basis of this methodology, we found the lower altitude zone and middle altitude zone. The women's has expended her lot of energy during the time of fodder collection. They spent per day 2 hours. They spent per day 2 hours to the 2 hours. 2 hours to 3 hours also. So it is the altitude, the lower altitude and middle zone are very important part for the women's energy expenditure. So basically, during this, we have suggested some management intervention. First is government should need to promote and implement the fodder nursery in the watershed, especially in the middle altitude villages of the watershed. And second is the animal husbandry should provide the and promote the some alternative of fodder to local community. And third is the promote some agroforestry fodder plants in nearby villages, especially in the lower altitude and mid altitude of the watershed. And the third is the district administrators should need to organize the women health camps in the village level. Uh, so basically, this is the summary of total work we have done.
See for your presentation. Photo collection like fuel wood and water collection are mainly responsibilities of women in the landscape. These daily chores keep the women so busy that they do not have enough time for themselves and to engage in productive sectors. Thank you once again, Mr. Joshi. Now, I would like to request our last speaker, Mr. Kishor Aryal. Mr. Aryal is a senior watershed management officer at the Regional Forest Directorate, SudurPaschim Province, Nepal. He's also a PhD candidate at the University of Southern Queensland, Australia. He has a decade-long experience in forest and natural resource management. His main research interests include forest governance, policy, and institutions. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Aryal for his presentation on tourism and rural livelihoods, a review of the tourism development program in the Khaptad region of Nepal.
Good afternoon, and we thank ICIMOD for inviting us in this Kailash CAFE to share our experience and our understanding about the tourism and livelihoods in a remote area of Nepal. Myself, Kishor Aryal, and
I'm Bozraj Pathak.
Yeah, we are here together to present. I will go through the slides, and if some queries or any remarks comes through the meeting chats, then we will deal it together. And the topic of our presentation is about tourism and rural livelihoods, and we will mainly focus on the review of tourism development programs in the Khaptad region that has been practiced for the last 30 or 40 years. I need to say that it's not based on quantitative research assessment, but it's about qualitative observation, key information, perspective, and the policy perspective on that. And first, we're gonna tell about the context of the Khaptad area. It's a pristine region in Nepal, which is least discovered, but it's highly potential. We want to see the region through the three perspectives. Firstly, the economy of that region, how people do their livings, what's the development status of that area, and what are the means of livelihood and development in that region. Secondly, we will go through the people's culture and social values in that region. And third, the landscape, the nature of that area, which is really awesome. Yeah. We'll go it through one by one. Yep, that's about economy. The people in that region mainly based on traditional farming practices. This is not that efficient. What we say in this modern technological environment, and people do livestock husbandry in the rangelands of that region. And forest product collection, it means collection of timber, fuel wood, and firewood for the domestic purposes. And some people practice collection and sales of non-timber forest product in that region. And tourism is one of the highly potential but least uncovered economic potential of that region. Yeah. And the culture is at the stake of the Khaptad region. It's one of the popular spiritual hermitages in Hindu Kush Himalaya, which is mainly for the enlightenment of Khaptad Baba in that region. and there's also Khaptad Baba Ashram. So that in Khaptad area, and there are other religious areas like Tribhuvan temple, which you can see in the picture in the right, and likewise Salinga, and some meditation camps which needs to be improved further in the future, but there are still some meditation camps in there, and some special meets and meditation places. And one of the famous Ganga Dashahara Mela used to be conducted there, especially in Jester. It's near. It's about 1 month far from now. You can come to Khaptad if you're interested to see that Mela. Yeah. Nonetheless, the landscape of the Khaptad, what we see from the perspective of natural resource scholars or the environmentalists, it's typically consists of lots of patches of grassland. First say it's 22 patches of grassland, 9 lakes, and Khaptad Daha is one of them, which is the key uh, lake in that region, and some gentle hills and slope, small hillocks out there, and some protected mammal species, bird species, and we can see Saipal and Alpi Himalayan range from that region, which is really nice to see. Next. But being based on that three context, if we see on the number of tourist arrival in that region, we can see only 49 foreigners other than Nepali and from the SAARC country, which is really too low. And we're gonna think about why the number of foreigners is that low in that region, in spite of having such a potential in tourism sector. And the number of tourists in 2015, if you see, there are just two, I guess, yeah, just two tourists, two foreigners there, were there in Khaptad region. What can be the reason for that? We will discuss it later on. But still, the number of tourists is very low. Yeah, if we see from the national perspective, the government's policy, government has initiated some policy intervention in that region. There are the three policies what really focus on the development of tourism in Nepal. The tourism policy is 2065 Vikram Samvat, and Nepal tourism year, which guided the tourism development in Nepal, and the tourism vision. These three major milestones of the policy in tourism sector in Nepal have guided the four main um, areas of the tourism development: tourism infrastructure and tourism activities. And similarly, the last two uh, areas of intervention which were envisioned by the policies were about the employment in the rural areas and benefit sharing at the grassroots level. If we see it closely, we can just see the focus of the current intervention in the upper two activities, just for tourism infrastructure and activities, but the lower two objectives are still needs to be developed largely. And when we see Khaptad, there are main three institutions are there doing their interventions for tourism and livelihood field in that region. And Khaptad National Park itself is one of the government institutions in there to promote and to conserve the Khaptad area for the sustainable development and biodiversity and tourism in that area. Similarly, Nepal Tourism Board is also conducting some activities, and another one, the most important, I would say, Khaptad Tourism Development Committee. The three stakeholders are doing Khaptad tourism development activities in there. Can you please go to the next? Yeah, what did what they have done yet for the last 30 years? If you see, these three institutions were mainly focusing on infrastructure, like food trails, signage and voting booths, resting places, view towers, and guest house in that beach planning area, which is also not that sufficient, but still they are doing some efforts on there. And similarly, some capacity building activities were also conducted in the past, like trekking guide training and cooking training in the region. Yeah, for the last 30 years, home we missed a lot. We couldn't find private sector being that prominent in that region. Similarly, we also couldn't see the major roles of civil society organizations or civil society actors in that area, and the attachment and ownership of the local people is also very less. We see, we missed them because we didn't have uh, any sectors to give their inputs and to invest on the tourism sector in that area. The private sector mainly for investment and economy, and civil society for awareness and capacity building for the tourism development activities, and likewise the local people to expose and to sell their culture, not just sell but to show their cultures and attach their culture with their means of livelihood. And the next place, and when we think about who is the responsible for that, and there's just a blame game. Like government is saying, it's not our business. And the tourism should be guided, should be forwarded by the velocity of the private sector, and at the same time, private sector is looking for the guidance from the government. It's a two-way blame game. So I think these both institutions are responsible for having not that development in the tourism sector in that Khaptad region. Yeah, if we see the efforts till to date, we can say that the provincial government, after the establishment of 3 years of its own, is developing tourism policy for the SudurPaschim Province. Is still in draft phase, hope to be endorsed soon. And the Khaptad Development Committee, which I told earlier was established 10 years ago, and it has invested almost 190 million Nepalese rupees for the development of tourism activities and programs in that region. And the Khaptad Tourism Development Strategic Plan was also developed 10 years back, which could not be implemented that way. And similarly, for now, we have a provincial government institutions dedicated for the tourism development. It's Provincial Tourism Development Program Implementation Unit, and famous fair and Mahotsav. We have some partners, tourism development society, and other private actors like NATA and Hotel Association of Nepal. And recently, a new committee of the Khaptad Khaptad Tourism Development Program has been established by the provincial government, and it has also been dedicated with the budget of almost 3 crore for the tourism development in that region. And infrastructure development works has been carried out by the various stakeholders that have been working in that region. Yeah, next, please. And we see some stakeholders here. It's the Ministry of Industry, Tourism, Forest and Environment of the province, and some tourism development society and its associated tourism action groups located in province. Hotels Professionals Association at Dangadi and Tikapur, NATA Far West, Nepal Tourism Board, and Tourism Journalists Association, SudurPaschim, which have been working a lot for the development of the tourism sector, but still we are lagging behind somewhere. Yeah. If you see the gaps, what are the gaps? Then the most important, I think, is the lack of proper institutional arrangement in that area. Who is responsible for what, and how the program, how the development programs should be guideline or mainstreamed to the economy and livelihood in that region. And secondly, the strategic program of action is still not in that proper way here, and the lack of coordination and cooperation among the tourism stakeholders in that region. And even if we see some tourism activities in that region, the share of tourism benefits to the mountain people is very few as compared to the other means of livelihood, because people cannot depend on tourism for their livelihood. They still have to depend on the extraction of natural resources and traditional farming. And likewise, the tourism activities driven by the private sectors, even if we accelerate it in the future, seems to be able to promote the tourism potentials. However, the real benefit of the tourism activities cannot be penetrated to the rural household if we do not guide the tourism development program and institutional arrangement in that way. Yeah. When being ambitious, we have many plans in papers. For instance, you can say that we can plan for a cable car from Jigrama to Khaptad region. It's about 7 kilometers long. Similarly, development of star hotels. We sometimes feel like what would happen if that really happens in that region. And infrastructure for various tourism activities like golf, yoga, meditation, and many others. And the most importantly, we can make it as a hub for the spiritual and cultural tourism destination. And even if we do a little effort, then it can be for the development of trails and supporting infrastructure for that region. I think this one is the second last slide of our talk. Yeah, being that ambitious is fine, but what's the ground we have to act now? And just now is that we have to link the tourism to the livelihoods through the 4 bands of areas, and this can be really um, helpful for the development of that region. The first one is about cultural tourism, the second wellness tourism in the modern era, and the wilderness tourism we all know, and the last one can be the farm tourism. If we promote these tourism activities in that region, then it can really link what the tourism for the local economy and what about the context of livelihood in the remote areas of Nepal. So to link that the two aspects, to expect, we have to go through this 4 band of actions, I think. And to start with, I think these 4 pillars are the main way based on which we can just start right now. First one is about infrastructure development for the development of food trails, accommodation, and resting places. I think there's some typing mistake, typo error exists there. And institutional development, it's about the capacity building of the tourism stakeholders in that region, and engaging community people for the tourism development activities and networking among the community people to the uh, private sector and also to the government sector. And third action could be for the development of tourism products and services. We can make some investment and innovation for the development and production of typical products of that region, cuisine and gift. And lastly, without marketing, no one can buy. So the promotion and marketing of tourism activities is also one of the major pillar for the tourism development in that region. So we see that 4 pillars are the ways ahead. 4 pillars together, the ways ahead for the to link the livelihood and tourism development in that region. Thank you for bearing with us. We hope to answer if any queries arise out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aryal, and thank you, Mr. Pathak, for their presentation. Yes, tourism is one of the prioritized sector of the government of Nepal for economic development, for employment generation in the country, and the government also had declared 2020 as the Visit Nepal year, but due to the pandemic, it was cancelled, and the sector has been very hard hit by the pandemic. And your presentation clearly shows that there are a lot of challenges for promoting tourism in the landscape. Now we move to the Q&A round of the session. So I see that there is a question for Dr. Veena. And indeed, you have responded to that question, but further, if you could elaborate more on that. So have you explored in your research how the products made by mountain women could be exported and which can help to even on better revenue?
Yeah, so like I said, most of the women in Dharchula side, they were involved in weaving, carpet weaving and all. So very intrinsic designs, very intrinsic hard work. So this is actually, these are meant for international market, but right now they used to rely on this international trade fairs, right? The Taklakot fair or the Joljibi fair, where traders from other countries also come in and buy stuff. So that was a mode of trade happening right now. Other than that, like I said about chura and ragi is also produced there. So now I interacted with the women group. They have actually started producing biscuits from ragi. Now ragi is very nutritious and it's a millet and a lot of calcium. It's healthy food, and nowadays people are getting conscious about healthy food and all. But we need to promote this kind of product also, like the way oats is being promoted. Oats is kind of uh, acknowledged by everyone as a healthy food. So it needs some kind of marketing, promotion, and all. But right now, what is happening is that even the biscuits produced by this women group, they are procured by the ICDS program, Integrated Child Development Scheme, wherein these biscuits are distributed to Anganwadis and all. Uh, so, in a way, government itself has intervened and created a market. So, had they not been there, then these women are not capable to reach out to the market and get the marketing channel open. So that is where they lack their capacity. And honey is there, and in other parts there are cheese products, dairy products which are produced from. Um, yeah, so uh, these are the products which we could identify in this particular landscape. But say in other landscape, there are bamboo products are there. Large cardamom is produced in some other landscape. So uh, what we noted is that we need to develop value chain of these commodities and um, engage private sector uh, to invest and support the development of value chain. Then only we will have a proper access to international market or even domestic market. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vidhyadharan. I have got one more question to you, actually. Based on your research and based on your experience, so what are the prerequisite enabling conditions necessary for promoting engagement of women in trade?
Um, so in most cases, what we have observed was that the economic activity is undertaken as a side business, like they work during their leisure time or they have some other interventions, they are engaged in agriculture, and during off season they do this weaving. So it's not a major economic activity of many of them, because they undertake several other responsibilities, and side by side they have this kind of interventions who are into handicrafts and weaving and all those things. On other in service sector, hospitality sector, we have seen women who have come forward to establish, say, restaurants, cafes, which are performing really well, and they even supported people during the time of COVID. So the attitude is something which is very important. That I talked about that in my presentation as well, and the entrepreneurship mindset and the attitude that we can go ahead and achieve. So that's very important while establishing a business. Um, you know, uh, and the financial literacy aspect. So this is something which we have proposed for future interventions, like building capacity of women in terms of financial literacy, digital literacy. So if somebody can develop their own page, a Facebook page or Insta page, and they can just promote, upload their products over there. So these are alternate channels of marketing, and these are getting very popular these days. Um, yeah, I hope I tried.
Thank you, Dr. Vidhyadharan. Now, I would like to move to Mr. Joshi, but before that, I would like to remind our participants to please type your questions in the chat box. We'll be taking the questions only in the chat box. So now, my question to Mr. Joshi, based on his experience again, are there any fodder bank established in the study area where you did the study to address the fodder shortage and to reduce the women drudgery? Thank you, Mr. Joshi. But I have got one more question to you. So in your one of your slide, I think that's slide number 17 or somewhere, you have calculated this labor energy, right? So would you please explain a bit on this? How did you calculate this labor energy?
On the basis of Gopalan et al. 1973, he calculated the total time of the women's from the collection time of the women's of fodder species, and as per her calculation, the per energy requirement per energy loss of a women's is 0.523 megajoule for heavy work. So on basis of this methodology, we have observed the local hill women's working as a hard worker, and the hard worker energy is per hour is 0.523. On the basis of this calculation, we followed applied it for our women's energy.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Joshi. That was very interesting. So now I would like to move to our third presenter, Mr. Arya. So in your presentation also you have highlighted what could be the ways for tourism promotion. That four pillars were very interesting. But in the high mountains in our region, one of the challenges is about the economic leakage. That we have due to tourism. So would you please highlight, based on your experience, how could we ensure that the benefits that goes to the rural communities stays with the rural communities? It is not, there's no or minimal economic leakages out there. So can you please highlight on that, Mr. Arya?
Yeah, thank you for your question, but I'm sorry that what exactly economic leakages you mean? Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, okay. So economic leakage means, in the high mountains generally, when a tourist goes there, so a lot of products are actually imported in that area, right? So from the lowland areas. So when those consumptions happen, right? So the increase in the demand of these products are again the final products, the money, the economic benefit more goes towards the lower market rather than it stays back. For instance, like I say, the noodles now, people, tourists going in the area, if they consume noodle, they are going to have to purchase that from the lower areas, right? So they do not produce noodles up there. So those are sort of economic leakages is very high in the high mountains, right? So have you ever, like in your working areas or in Khaptad, I'm sure there's high economic leakages there happening.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest for that? Yeah.
Thank you. I think Pataksha will answer that.
Thank you. That Kishor sir already mentioned that in our presentation, the lacking for the livelihood of local people, both the government and private sector and the other committees that are the stakeholders of tourism in Khaptad area. Peoples are not getting such benefit. Local people are not getting such benefit that we expect. Our local people from Khaptad are expecting from us. They are still buying and taking their food from Dangari, and they are buying from outside. But
In the same way, may I add to that? Under our
Yes,
four
yes,
pillars, if
please.
you see that, we are focusing on tourism products and services that are mainly to replace the buying of products from lowland area or from the the border side. But if we focus on the production of local crops or other things, and we can make it replace. Like if we say it in Nepali, if we eat dhido in Nepali, and we can replace it chao chao, replace all of that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's kind of, we should. That's why we were focusing on that four pillar,
This
that
farm
production
tourism,
of
no?
product and services are also equally important for that. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
explain some
So
more? You know, the
yes, yes,
people
please.
from that area, people from Khaptad area, they are getting various goods from outside from the Khaptad area. Still there is a large great potentiality. For example, if anybody is, if someone is exploring tourism, or someone is getting economic benefit from tourism sector from that area, the people from the tours and travel agency and other private sector from outside the SudurPaschim, they are getting some kind of benefits, few benefits from its Khaptad. And you know how to avoid the leakage.
I think
Can you
the
explain?
only way is to promote the production that produces from that local region,
Yes, yes,
and
I
then we
agree
should
with
have
that. Yeah, thank
bigger.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Aryal. There are two more questions to you as well. So one question is about that you mentioned about the institute. There's a gap in the institutional arrangement, and but there seems to be quite a large number of institutions there. So what do you mean by this gap in the institutional arrangement? And the other question is, do we have got any data on how many service providers operate businesses or in that area? Do we have that sort of information as well?
Yeah. Thank you for your question. I'll go to the first question first. What we know that lots of organizations, still the local organizations are also working out there, but the organizations are running in that way that they don't know where they are going, where to go. And I mean, what is the formal, what's the reason, what's the motto of that reason, what's the main agenda of the Khaptad, and what's the main attraction of that Khaptad. So it's mainly based on the lack of coordination and cooperation and the formal institutional arrangement for that region. But hopefully, we will solve that problem very soon, because we have established a development committee that is dedicated for the development of the region. So the lack of institutional arrangement is the lackings of tourism development yet to date. And for the another question, you mean for the data about how many organizations there? We're also searching for that, but it's there are no any formal document. We find it, but we are still trying to get that.
Thank you to all speakers and participants for attending this session. Now, before handing over to Sunita ji, I would briefly like to summarize all three presentations. Well, the first two presentation in the session highlighted two different but very related gender issues, while the third one was on governance. Most of the time, whenever we hear the word trader, we synonymously think of men. But I think today's Dr. Vidhyadharan presentation challenges that thought. So using very qualitative research methods, Dr. Vidhyadharan has unraveled the stories of women traders in the landscape, and hopefully there will be more interventions to create enabling environment for the women traders. Now, the second presentation, using both qualitative and quantitative research methods, Mr. Joshi has quantified the contribution of rural women in livestock and fodder management. Through its findings, I think the concerned agencies can really design further interventions to reduce women's drudgeries. Now, the third presentation was about the tourism governance issues in the Khaptad National Park in the Kailash Sacred Landscape. So tourism is one of the promising sectors for livelihood development of rural mountain communities in the landscape. And the presentation of Mr. Aryal has clearly shown the challenges of tourism development in Khaptad, which is very relevant elsewhere in the landscape as well as in the overall HKH region. Now, the interesting aspect of this presentation is that it shows that not only the lack of infrastructure or the manpower is the limiting factor, but also there are certain policy hurdles, the certain institutional cooperation arrangements. So there is a need of a strategic vision for tourism promotion in the landscape. Now, once again, I would like to thank all the speakers and the participants. Thank you very much for joining the session. Over to you, Sunita ji.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pasakhala, and all the speakers for the insightful presentation and discussion on the gender and governance issues from the landscape. For now, we'll have a short tea break and meet you all after the 5 minutes. Please join us for the closing session after the 5 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back after this short break. So within these 4 days, we have learned and become familiar with researches across the multiple disciplines within the Kailash Sacred Landscape. So as we are at the concluding stage of the Kailash CAFE 2021, we would like to start the conclusion session with some snapshot from the Kailash CAFE 2021. Please enjoy this video. I hope you all enjoyed this journey of Kailash CAFE 2021. And now we will hear some concluding remarks from the participants. So regarding this, at first I would like to request Dr. Zhaoli from Chengdu Institute of Biology, Chinese Academy of Sciences for her remarks. Over to you, Dr. Zhaoli.
Dear all, kind regards to each and every one of you from Chengdu, China. My name is Zhaoli, as introduced, and I sincerely appreciate Dr. Janita, Dr. Srijana, and the team giving me this opportunity to say a few words at this closing ceremony. First of all, please allow me to heartily congratulate the ICIMOD Kailash and technology team as well as all the participants for the great success of this very informative Kailash CAFE. We are participating in the event online from different locations. But I'm sure that you will all agree with me that we have had quite interactive and alive sharing of research findings and experiences in last 4 days. The skillful moderators, the knowledgeable and well-prepared presenters, and the enthusiasm participation of people are all essential to make the event a big success. I'm really proud to be part of it. In the past 4 days, we have covered a wide range of topics on landscape and biodiversity, ecosystem services and livelihoods, culture and heritage, as well as gender and governance. These topics are all ICIMOD focused working areas, but the contents we shared have gone far beyond ICIMOD's KSLCDI program. Personally, I've learned many things new and interesting from the presentations, such as the increase of forest coverage and the Himalaya griffon in KSL, Nepal, the people's perception of invasive plant species, and the architectural reflection of cultural heritage in KSL, India, the oil extraction and analysis from a number of cash crops in both India and Nepal, the use of eye heritage, the GIS-based understanding of KSL images, the women traders and the women drudgery in the landscape, etc. I must say that it was surprising to me to learn the big production of Xanthoxylum amatium in Nepal KSL, because I used to think this plant that we call huajiao or Sichuan pepper is unique in my place in southwest China. It is not only a valuable medicinal plant here, but also an indispensable spice for the Sichuan cuisine, especially our famous Sichuan hot pot. Dr. Dipesh was wondering if your Nepalese pepper and our Sichuan pepper are the same species. My previous positive answer was based on their shared same scientific name. However, we shall definitely request ICIMOD to help us explore more about this and the market potentials. Throughout the Kailash CAFE, I somehow feel inadequate participation from the Chinese partners, although Professor Shipei Li and Dr. Zhang Yucheng have been given presentations and attending the webinar all this time. As many of you are aware, the elevation of KSL China is generally over 4,600 meters above sea level, and its land cover consists of 62% of highland rangelands, 20% of bare rocks, 12% of permanent snow and ice, 5.5% of water bodies, and the rest less than 5% of towns and cultivated lands. Apparently, the remoteness and uneasy accessibility of KSL China has limited research activities there. In the meantime, local herders' livelihood is generally not a problem, for government subsidy alone makes nearly 1,000 USD per herder annually, which makes small livelihood programs not very applicable or welcome. Nevertheless, under implementation of ICIMOD KSL CDI program, Professor Shipei Li has been guiding China team to monitor the rangeland condition and the livestock population changes, to map people wildlife conflicting hotspots, and to explore alternative livelihoods, and so on. On account of the reality in KSL China, our efforts have been largely put on training of local stakeholders for improved tourism management and sustainable use of natural resources. Two examples. For the training, one of our ICIMOD KSL CDI program trainees, Mr. Zhou Mei, the leader of the Kailash Yak team, has been elected to the National People's Congress. He is now still a herder, but involved in the country's national law and policy making process. He has also supervision right over the law and policy execution. Another example on the policy, our team has produced rangeland management policy recommendation to the National Central Government Office, and that has been officially accepted. What I would recommend ICIMOD and partners to further focus on in KSL China include three areas. Number one, better understanding of climate change and impacts. Number two, monitoring of biodiversity and ecosystem dynamics. And number three, building resilience of local people and environment to better cope with the changes. Once again, warm congratulations to ICIMOD, Kailash, and the technology team, as well as all the participants for this successful event. And I do hope this Kailash Cafe won't close after this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zhaoli, for your concluding remarks and your suggestions. Similarly, now I'll request Dr. Vikram Negi, scientist at GP Pant National Institute of Himalayan Environment and Development, for his remarks. Over to you, Dr. Negi.
Thank you, madam. First off, thank you to Kailash Cafe team for giving me this opportunity. Kailash Cafe is a really wonderful initiative by the ICIMOD, considering the role played by the transboundary projects, including Kailash Sacred Landscape Conservation and Development.
We lost Dr. Negi. I think he might have some technical problem. So we move on to the next remarks. So I'll request Mr. Chandra Subedi.
Hello.
Okay, so Dr. Negi is back. Please, Dr. Negi, continue.
Sorry, actually, there is very, very poor network connection. So I'm just saying that this Kailash project has played an important role in biodiversity management and conservation, livelihood diversification and enhancement, and exchange of knowledge, regional cooperation, and socio-economic development and tourism development. Our institute for last 5 or 6 years have been involved in the three transboundary projects, and I am particularly associated with this Kailash Sacred Landscape conservation initiative in Indian part. And under this program, enhancement of livelihood of local people with the local resource-based interventions, water spring recharge, medicinal plant cultivation, biodiversity conservation, and establishment of Gloria sites are the major output. Taking benefit of these programs, indigenous community in this region have diversified the livelihood options and getting substantial income from these options or interventions. And in this project, we are able to mainstream the biodiversity for the livelihood enhancement and also for the management of biodiversity. Among other outputs, Gloria, which is Global Observation Research Initiative in Alpine Environment, is a collaborative program of 42 countries for monitoring long-term changes of climate change on alpine ecosystem. I think this activity is very important, taking account of climate change globally. The result would be able to provide the impact of climate change on alpine vegetation and also build information for the National Action Plan on Climate Change for the country. In my opinion, the platform provided by the Kailash Cafe to the researcher, academician, and scientists is really appreciable and well reflected the work that has been done in, and many activities are undergoing in the landscape. All the presentations were quite good with enough research content and covered the major themes of the transboundary programs. I have found few presentations quite interesting, like citizen science mobile application for collecting the cultural heritage data, dendro ecological and dendro climatic study in Apinappa conservation area, mapping the hot spot and cold spot of the cultural ecosystem services, assessment of green fodder resource diversity and women drudgery, and status of human-wildlife conflicts in the lower Nampa region of Humla, Nepal. So, congratulations to all the presenter authors and also to the organizing team of Kailash Cafe, especially to Srijana Joshi ji, Susmita Kumar ji, Rana ji, and Janta madam. And I have few suggestion, or you can say way forward. The first one, which is not directly to link this cafe, I think there were many presentation which reflected a lot of successful intervention in the landscape. I think these interventions should be documented as a common document, or maybe given the title like "Success Story of Kailash" in the form of a book. The second one is a transboundary forum on biodiversity conservation is need to be supported in long run. And now there are three specific to the Kailash Cafe. The first one is rejection must be adopted for poor quality abstract during review process. Presently, I don't know whether it was adopted or not in this time. The second one is, if possible, the abstract or presentation need to be converted into full-length manuscript and should be published as a proceeding of this cafe. Authors can be requested to submit full-length paper what they have presented. So this will be a great achievement or outcome of this cafe. The last one, this Kailash Cafe exercise should be organized every year, and information regarding organization must be provided at least 3 months before, so that so that researchers are able to develop their full-length paper or presentation. So this would provide key status activities ongoing success of the transboundary program in the landscape. So with these words, I am stopping here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Negi, for your remarks and for your suggestions. I want to ensure that in future we'll incorporate your suggestions, and we'll try to make it more improve it more. This is the first time, but later on in the coming year, maybe we'll improve and incorporate your suggestions from the next Kailash Cafe. So now I'd like to request Chandra Subedi, Assistant Professor at Research Center for Applied Science and Technology, Recast, Tribhuvan University, for his remarks. Over to you, Dr. Chandrakant Subedi.
Namaste to all of you. Thank you very much, Sunita ji. I am very much honored and delighted to deliver remarks on concluding day of Kailash Consortium of Academics and Researchers for Experience Sharing Kailash Cafe 2021, which is organized by Kailash Sacred Landscape Conservation and Development Initiative. However, the initiative is implemented in 3 neighboring countries, China, India, and Nepal. We put our collective effort for the conservation and development of the landscape as a single entity. The landscape is more fragile and richer in culture and ecology. It has the fine network of religious and sacred sites, high altitude lakes, snow-peaked mountains, permafrost. Major research system of the Asia originates from the landscape, support livelihoods of a million of people in the downstream. I would like to congratulate KSL team ICIMOD to bring this innovative idea of Kailash Cafe during the pandemic situation of COVID-19. I believe the Kailash Cafe become an excellent platform to bring together researchers of different fields working in the landscape and present their research work. I found it is more interactive, where academics and researchers of different academic background share their experience. I would also like to thank all the presenters and moderators for making Cafe lively. Different agendas set to discuss during the cafe is well appreciated that incorporates different dimensions of the landscape. The first session followed it by inaugural session discussed on landscape and biodiversity. Biodiversity is the integral part of the landscape. The global warming and climate change has adverse effect on biodiversity of the landscape that threats livelihoods of people. The adoption of integrated landscape ecosystem based approach combining agriculture, animal husbandry, and tourism in the semi-arid and arid area of landscape, and their management found effective in building resilience of socio-ecosystem. The approach can be disseminated in other parts of landscape too. The invasive and alien species pose serious threats to biodiversity and ecosystem function in the landscape. Local perception is important for the management of invasive species in the landscape. A case study presented here is valuable to foster socio-ecological concept on biological invasion. As Himalayan regions are more vulnerable to climate change, the dendroecology and dendroclimatic study reflects the present scenario of climate change effect on the vegetation of the landscape. In the second day, presentation focused on the thematic area, ecosystem services and sustainable livelihoods. Ecosystem services are important for their bundles of benefits, foundation for sustainable development, and essential for our survival. Forest resources are the basis for livelihoods in the mountain people. Forest dependency heavily impacted ecosystem as a whole. The research project carried out on forest cover change will helpful for landscape level planning and future development and management intervention. Caterpillar fungus is one of the source of income for people residing in the landscape. The unsustainable harvesting poses question for the viable population in the future and larger ecological implication in the landscape. KSL is home to several high-valued NTFs. The trade of NTFs can be a good source of income for local people and revenue generation. Identification of an efficient, low-cost technology development and value addition essential to develop entrepreneurship of the people. The presenters presented many pertinent issues related to environment, society, and health implication in the poster session. The presenters presented their researches on culture and heritage and technology. The landscape is rich in culture and heritage. Presenters highlighted the application of conventional method, machine learning technique, cartography, and GIS tool to map the cultural heritage sites of the landscape, which is helpful to make good decisions in the landscape. In the technology session, the extraction, purification, and characterization of vegetable oils and their medicinal value were presented. The technology can be transferred to the community to uplift their livelihoods. The use of citizen science mobile application for data collection of heritage site is also an important tool to fulfill the data gap in the landscape. The participation of women and men informal and informal decision-making structures varies between countries. We belong to male-dominated society where women involved in manual work. Today's presentation also shows that women do not have access to finance and modern technology. They mostly spend their time in drudgery for collection of fodder. Thus, a collective effort is needed to manage streaming women in the decision-making process. The government and stakeholders should explore tourism destination areas of the landscape, make necessary institutional arrangement. It will help to improve the livelihoods of people in the landscape. I hope the interaction between academics and researchers in this platform open different questions for future study in the landscape. Once again, I would like to thank organizer for providing me this opportunity. Stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chandrakant Subedi ji, for your remarks and for summarizing the whole Kailash Cafe. Now, last but not the least, I request Dr. Srirjana Joshi, the ecosystem and specialist at ICIMOD, for closing remarks and request her to close this Kailash Cafe 2021. Over to you, Dr. Srirjana.
Thank you, Sunita. A very good afternoon, everyone. We are now towards the end of the program. On behalf of Kailash Cafe organizing team, let me take this opportunity to thank you all for joining us for 4 days event of Kailash Cafe. Your active participation has made this Knowledge Cafe a successful event. We begin our Kailash Cafe journey 2 months back with a call for proposal for the abstract. The main objective of the cafe was to share knowledge, research finding, and expertise among researchers and establish platform for people to exchange and identify regional research gaps to determine areas for future interventions. We hope that the platform really provide you all to exchange research ideas and networking. Within a very short period of time, we received about 35 abstracts from the researchers. 29 abstracts submitted was selected for Kailash CAFE, and it was reviewed by our 11 Knowledge Committee member. In the first edition of Kailash CAFE, we had total 6 sessions, including the poster sessions covering different thematic areas: biodiversity and landscape, ecosystem services and livelihood, culture and heritage, technology, gender and governance, and we witnessed outstanding presentations and rich discussions during each sessions. And we are also planning to come up with special issues. We request all our distinguished speakers to share with us your full paper by end of May 2021. This is the first edition of Kailash CAFE, and we are planning to make this as a calendar event every year, and we look forward for your continuous support and guidance from our partner institutions. With this, let me conclude with some sincere words of thanks. First of all, I would like to thank our partner institution from China, Institute of Geographic Science and Natural Resource Research, CAS, Chengdu Institute of Biology, CAS, Sichuan University, Tibet Academy of Agricultural and Animal Husbandry Science. From India, I would like to thank our focal Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, GB Pant National Institute of Himalayan Environment, Wildlife Institute of India, Central Himalayan Environment Association, Biodiversity Board of Uttarakhand. And from Nepal, I would like to thank our focal ministry, Ministry of Forest and Environment and Research Center for Applied Science and Technology for supporting us conducting this event. And my special thanks goes to Professor Shipeli, Dr. Yan Zhaoli, Dr. V.S. Negi, Dr. B.S. Adhikari, Mr. Chandra Kanta Subedi from our partner organization for joining and attending all our sessions and supporting us. I am also grateful to our Director General, Dr. Pema Gamso, ICIMOD, for joining us to deliver a welcoming remarks during the opening session of the event. And Dr. Nakul Chetri, Regional Program Manager, Transboundary Landscape, for sharing rich experiences from the Transboundary Landscape. I would like to say a big thank to you, our distinguished speakers from various institutions and from various backgrounds for your contribution, and also colleagues who joined our event and contributed in this platform. It would not have been possible without your continuous support. I would like to thank all our Knowledge Committee and for your generous contribution of time and energy to this voluntary work of Kailash CAFE. My special thanks also goes to our knowledge management team and communication unit of ICIMOD for their great support, especially Sushmita, Samuel, Sudeep, Manish, Dharma, Poonam, Abubakar, and Samriddhi. My sincere thanks to IT team, especially Rez Rajbandari, for smooth running of this virtual event. And of course, our organizing team, Janita, Binay, Sunita, Shushmita, Indu, Pradyumna, Sunena, Rez, for working tirelessly to conduct this event. We have shared the feedback form in our chat box, and we will also share it through your email as well. We kindly request all our audience to fill the form and share back to us your feedback. Your feedback will really help us to improve in organizing the event in better way next time. With that, I would like to close this session. Take care, stay safe, goodbye, and see you all next year.